Hello and welcome to Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast number 36. This week we look at one of the Doctor's scariest alien enemies. Now you may remember last week I asked why I considered the Cybermen the scariest of the Doctor's foes. Well, the reason is that ultimately they were us. We will be them. They're portrayed as the ultimate end for humanity. Like it or not, the human race has been looking for ways to prolong life as long as it's been in existence, and it would be true to say that with advances in medical science being what they are, fact is now closer than many are comfortable with to mirroring fiction.
You will become like us.
The Cybermen were originally a wholly organic species of humanoids, originating on Earth's twin planet Mondus, that began to implant more and more artificial parts into their bodies as a means of self-preservation. This led to the race becoming coldly logical and calculating, with every emotion deleted from their minds. They were created by Dr. Kit Pedler, the unofficial scientific advisor to Doctor Who's producers, and Jerry Davis in 1966, first appearing in the serial The 10th Planet, the last to feature William Hartnell as the first Doctor. They've since been featured numerous times in their extreme attempts to survive through conquest. Following the revival of the show, the Cybermen returned as a parallel universe version and appeared in the 2006 two-part story Rise of the Cybermen and Age of Steel, and have been recurring villains in the revived series ever since. A further redesign took place in the 2013 episode Nightmare in Silver, showing technologically advanced Cybermen able to instantly upgrade themselves and fixed flaws and weaknesses. They also appeared in the Doctor Who spin-off Torchwood in the episode Cyberwoman in 2006. The Cybermen have also appeared in 2010 instalments of the Doctor Who video game series The Adventure Games.
This moral discussion is irrelevant.
The name Cyberman comes from cybernetics, a term used in Norbert Weiner's book, Cybernetics or Control and Communication in the Animal and the Machine. Weiner used the term in reference to the control of complex systems in the animal world and in mechanical networks, in particular self-regulating control systems. By 1960, doctors were performing research into surgically or mechanically augmenting humans or animals to operate machinery in space, leading to the coining of the term cyborg for cybernetic organism. In the 1960s, spare part surgery was starting out, with the first gigantic heart-lung machines being developed. There were also a series of suggestions of wiring the nerve endings of amputees directly into machines for a quicker response. In 1963, Kit Pedler had a conversation with his wife, who was also a doctor, about what would happen if a person had so many prostheses that they could no longer distinguish themselves between man and machine. He got the opportunity to develop this idea when, in 1966, after an appearance on the BBC science programme Tomorrow's World and Horizon, the BBC hired him to help on the Doctor Who serial The War Machines. That eventually led to him writing, with Jerry Davis's help, The 10th Planet. Pedler, influenced by the logic-driven Treens from the Dan Dare comic strip, originally envisaged the Cybermen as space monks, but was persuaded by Davis to concentrate on his fears about the direction of spare part surgery. The original Cybermen were imagined as human, but with plastic and metal prostheses. The Cybermen of the 10th Planet still have human hands, and their facial structures are visible beneath the masks they wear. However, over time they evolved into metallic, more robot-like designs. The Cybermen attracted controversy when parents complained after a scene in Tube of the Cybermen in which a dying Cyberman spurted white foam from its innards. Another incident was initiated by Pedler himself, who took a man in a Cyberman costume into a busy shopping area of St Pancras. The reaction of the public was predictable, and the crowd almost blocked the street and the police were called in. Pedler said that he wanted to know how people would react to something quite unusual. He wrote his last Cyberman story, The Invasion, in 1968, and left Doctor Who with Jerry Davis to develop the scientific thriller series Doomwatch.
This is most rational, Doctor.
While the Doctor's archenemy, the Daleks, were on the whole unchanged during the series' original 26-season run, the Cybermen were seen to change with almost every encounter. The Cybermen are humanoid, but have been altered to the point where they have few remaining organic parts. However, they do retain living human brains. In their first appearance in the series, the only portions of their bodies that still seemed human were their hands. By their next appearance in the moon base in 1967, their bodies were entirely covered up in their metallic suits, with their hands replaced by two-fingered claws. But they changed back to regular five-fingered hands in the invasion in 1968. As they're relatively few in number, the Cybermen tend towards covert activity, scheming from hiding and using human pawns or robots to act in their place until they need to appear. They also seek to increase their numbers by converting others into Cybermen, a process known as cyber conversion in the classic series and upgrading in the newer series. An often painful process as body parts are removed and replaced with cybernetic parts. It's presumed, and often implied, that there are still organic components beneath their suits, meaning that they're actually cyborgs, not robots. In the 10th planet, a Cyberman tells a group of humans that our brains are just like yours. Although, by the time of attack of the Cybermen in 1985, their brains seem to have been replaced with electronics. Also in this same story, two human slave prisoners of the Cybermen on the planet Telos, named Bates and Stratton, have revealed that their organic arms and legs have been removed by the Cybermen and replaced by cyber substitutes. In Earthshock in 1982, the actors' chins were vaguely visible through a clear perspex area on the helmet to suggest some kind of organic matter. In Tomb of the Cybermen in 1967, veins and brains were visible through the domed head of the Cyberman controller, and similarly in Attack of the Cybermen in 1985 and The Age of Steel in 2006, the cyber controller's brain is visible through the dome. The first is a Monda cyber controller, while the second involves the alternate Earth's John Lumick. However, in Revenge of the Cybermen in 1975, the Doctor says they are total machine creatures. The audio play Real Time implies that the converted victim's face remains beneath the Cyberman faceplate, although the audio plays, like all non-televised spin-off media, are of uncertain canonicity with regards to the television series. The Virgin New Adventures novel Iceberg by David Banks states that some Cybermen experience rare flashes of emotional memory from the time before they were converted, which are then usually suppressed. The Cybermen in the new series are usually constructed from human brains bonded to a Cyberman exoskeletal shell with an artificially grown nervous system threaded throughout, although direct grafting of cyber components is another method of conversion, in the Torchwood episode Cyberwoman. In the Pandorica Opens, a Cyberman head is shown to open up, revealing an entire human skull, and not just the brain.
The Doctor is as cautious as our records warned us.
Although the Cybermen often claim that they've done away with human emotion, they've exhibited emotions ranging from anger to smug satisfaction in their confrontations with the Doctor. Some Cybermen in the early stories were even given individual names such as Krang. Some parallel Earth Cybermen did retain some memories of their pre-conversion lives, although their emotional responses varied. In Cyberwoman, the Torchwood story, a partial conversion led to a degree of insanity in Lisa Hallett, which was retained even after she transferred her brain into a fully human body. In Doomsday, Yvonne Hartman is able to retain at least some elements of her personality, in order to prevent the advance of a group of other Cybermen, and is last seen weeping tears of what appear to be either oil or blood. In the same episode, the Cyber leader expresses clear frustration at the humans' refusal to surrender, although in a later scene he criticises the Doctor for showing emotion. In Age of Steel, the Doctor is able to defeat the Cybermen by shutting down their emotional inhibitors, enabling them to see what they have become. Their realisation of what they have become led them to either shut down or, out of sheer horror, partially explode. Lastly, when the Cyber leader is killed, his head explodes with some white liquid leaking down his body, and there are references that in that episode to a patented Cybus Industries mixture of chemicals used to preserve the brain. The Virgin Missing Adventures novel Killing Ground by Steve Lyons suggests that some Cybermen imitate emotions to intimidate and unnerve their victims. The Big Finish Productions audio play Spare Parts, which is set on Mondas in the early days of cyber conversion, suggests that the Cybermen deliberately remove their emotions as part of the conversion process to stifle the physical and emotional trauma of becoming a Cyberman.
Emergency cutout has activated.
The Cybermen have had a number of weaknesses since their introduction. The most notable weakness of the original Cybermen is gold. but their aversion to gold wasn't mentioned until their attempt to destroy the planet Voga, the so-called Planet of Gold, in Revenge of the Cybermen in 1975. Initially, it was explained that, due to its non-corrodable nature, gold essentially chokes their respiratory systems. For example, the glitter gun, a weapon used during the cyber wars in the future, fired gold dust at its targets. However, in later serials, gold appeared to affect them rather like silver affects werewolves, with gold coins or gold-tipped bullets fired at them having the same effect. The revived series Cybermen had no such weakness. Cybermen are also efficiently killed when shot with either their own guns or by a Dalek. Other weaknesses from early stories include solvents, gravity-based technology, and excessive levels of radiation. In the Age of Steel, an EMP grenade is shown to disable a Cyberman and shut down its emotional inhibitor. The vulnerability to gold is clearly not present in some early Cyberman types. For example, the types seen in the Invasion were unlikely to have it, or perhaps more likely the weakness simply wasn't known. Otherwise the Doctor and unit would simply have used it, and not required the elaborate planning involving the assistance of both a Russian missile base and the Cyberman's own puppet ally Tobias Vaughan. It's unclear precisely how many of the different types and which type of Cybermen are actually vulnerable to gold. Also, there's no official or canon documentation of Cybermen prior to the revived program's Cybers version being vulnerable to Dalek weapons. Their armour is often depicted as flexible and resistant to bullets, but can be penetrated by gold arrows and projectiles made of gold. The Cybermen are bulletproof and are very resilient, but not indestructible. They're vulnerable to heavy explosives, electromagnetic pulses, and specialised weaponry, such as Dalek weapons.
Here are your orders.
The first Cyberman costumes were designed by BBC costume designer Sandra Reed. Early costumes included items and materials such as cloth, rubber diving suits, PVC, chest units, tubing, practice golf balls, cricketer's gloves, and silver-painted Doc Martin boots. The 1980s design used converted flight suits painted silver. Unlike the Doctor's other foes, the Cybermen costumes have changed substantially in appearance over the years, looking more and more modern, although retaining certain commonalities of design, the most iconic being the handlebars attached to the Cyberman heads that were supposed to aid them with their hearing. Other design elements include their round eye holes and their chest units. Disguised black-coloured Cybermen were also seen briefly in Attack of the Cybermen. Aside from these changes, variation in design between the rank-and-file Cybermen and their leaders has also been seen. In The Wheel in Space and The Invasion, the Cyber Director was depicted as an immobile mechanism. In Tomb of the Cybermen and Attack of the Cybermen, the Cyber Controller was a larger Cyberman with a high-domed head instead of the handlebar helmet design. In Revenge of the Cybermen, the Cyber Leader had a completely black helmet except for his face. From Earthshock in 1982 onwards, he could be distinguished from his troops by the black handlebars on his helmet. The Cyber Leaders in Army of Ghosts and the Next Doctor also had black handles, with the latter also sporting a black face or visor and transparent brain casing. Because the Doctor is a time traveller, he meets the Cybermen at various points in their history out of sequence from the order the serials were made. This can be confusing, since the Cybermen set in earlier periods of history can sometimes look more sophisticated than those set in later periods. Lawrence Miles suggests in his reference book About Time 5 that the anachronistically designed Cybermen of Earthshock and Silver Nemesis are time travellers like those in Attack of the Cybermen. The Doctor Who role-playing game Cyberfiles worked around the contradiction by stating that in the 10th planet the oldest designs of Cybermen were used for the attack, while the later more sophisticated models remained on Mondas. A cyber head was seen in the 2005 episode Dalek, kept in a display case. Text on the info card states that the head was found in a sewer, suggesting that the head was from the Invasion. However, the corrugated type of handles on the head indicate that the prop is from Revenge of the Cybermen. The info card states that the head was found in 1975, the year in which the Invasion was possibly set, and also the year in which Revenge of the Cybermen was broadcast. The Cybermen returned in episodes 5 and 6 of the 2006 series of the revived show, in a two-part story set on alternative Earth. The new Cybermen were designed by production designer Edward Thomas's team and Neil Gorton at Millennium Effects. The new Cyberman design is physically imposing, being about 6 foot 7 inches tall. They're made from burnished steel instead of silver, feature Cybers Industries logo on their chest, and have a general Art Deco design. The other distinct Cyberman design is that of the Cyber Controller, which had glowing eyes, a transparent forehead revealing the brain, and sockets on its chest plate providing connections to other systems. The Torchwood episode Cyberwoman features a partially cyber-converted woman who lacks the outer layer of a fully converted Cyberman. Her body is encased in metal structures, but much of her flesh, including her face, is visible, though it's not clear how much of her own flesh has been replaced and how much is merely covered. Another character speculates that she could be as much as 40 to 45% human and 55 to 60% Cyberman.
Now you will see our strength.
Early Cybermen had an unsettling sing-song voice, constructed by placing the inflections of words on the wrong syllables. In their first appearance, the effect of this was augmented by having a Cyberman abruptly open his mouth wide and keep it open without moving his tongue or lips, while the separately recorded voice would be playing, and then shut it quickly when the line was finished. Although the cloth-like masks of the first Cybermen were soon replaced by a full helmet, a similar physical effect was used until The Wheel in Space in 1968. Later, the production team used special effects from its radiophonic workshop by adding first a mechanical larynx, then a vocoder, to modify the speech to make it sound more artificial. In later stories of the original series, and in the audio plays, 2 copies of the voice track were sampled and pitch shifted downwards by differing amounts, then layered to produce the effect, sometimes with the addition of a small amount of flanging. From Revenge of the Cybermen to Silver Nemesis in 1988, the actors provided the voices themselves, using microphones and transmitters in the chest units. The voices for the 2006 Return of the Cybermen are similar to the buzzing electronic monotone voices of the Cybermen used in The Invasion. They were provided by Nicholas Briggs. As shown in the second series of Doctor Who Confidential, the timbre was created by processing Briggs' voice through a Moog ring modulator. Unusually, in Age of Steel, the Cyber Controller retains his voice after being upgraded, but it is still electronic. In Doomsday, a Cyberman, which contains the brain of Torchwood Institute director Yvonne Hartman, retains a female-sounding though still electronic voice, as does the partially converted Lisa Hallett in Cyberwoman, when her Cyberman personality is dominant. In an effect reminiscent of the earliest Cybermen's mouths snapping open while speaking, the new Cybermen have a blue light in their mouth, which blinks in synchronization with their speech. Since the Age of Steel in 2006, the Cybermen have had a nasally sounding electronic kind of voice. This continued all the way until closing time in 2011. As of 2013 in the episode Nightmare in Silver, however, the Cybermen now have deep, almost growl-like voices. Their mouths retain a blue light-up effect, but it flickers instead of staying lit, as opposed to the 2006 design.
Have the Doctor brought here? Yes, Controller.
Some Cybermen are given titles, being credited as Cyber Leader, Cyber Lieutenant, Cyber Scout, or the Cyber Controller. An immobile computer has appeared in The Invasion that has been referred to as the Cyber Planner. The Controller, as seen and destroyed in various serials, also may or may not be the same consciousness in different bodies. It appears to recognise and remember the Doctor from previous encounters. The Cyber Controller in the Age of Steel used the brain of John Lumick. In Doomsday, a Cyber Leader appears, and when he is destroyed, mention is made of downloading his data files into another Cyberman unit, which is then upgraded to Cyber Leader. In 2008 Christmas special The Next Doctor, this featured a new, more agile variant called a Cyber Shade. The Doctor theorises that it's a more primitive version of a Cyberman, using the brain of a cat or a dog, and they do physically resemble animals, as they have fur and walk on all fours. In the same story, a Cyber King appears. According to the Doctor, it's a Dreadnought-class ship for use in invasions. Resembling a Cyberman hundreds of feet tall, it contains a cyber factory in its chest, and is controlled from within its mouth. Its right arm can be converted into a cannon, and its left into a laser. A redesigned version of the Cyberman appeared in Nightmare in Silver on the 11th of May 2013. After almost 1,000 years of evolution, these latest Cybermen are more agile and flexible than ever before. The Cyberplanner also made a return, becoming a split personality of the 11th Doctor via a cybernetic implant, dubbing itself Mr. Clever. Unlike previous Cyberplanners, this one had a rather erratic personality, thanks to the Doctor being its host. It nearly beat the Doctor in the battle for control of his mind, and of course if he'd won, the Cybermen would have gained the knowledge of time travel.
Commander, is your subcutaneous transponder still operational?
Cyberman technology is almost completely orientated towards weaponry. Apart from their own bodies, that is. When originally seen in the 10th planet, they had large energy weapons that attached to their chests. In the moon base, the Cybermen had two types of weaponry, an electrical discharge from their hands which stunned the target, and a type of gun. They also made use of a large laser cannon with which they attempted to attack the base itself. The hand discharge was also present in the Tomb of the Cybermen, which featured a smaller handheld cyber weapon shaped like a pistol that was described as an X-ray laser. In the Wheel in Space, the Cybermen could also use the discharge to operate machinery, and had death rays built into their chest units. They displayed the same units in the Invasion, as well as carrying large rifles for medium-distance combat. In Revenge of the Cyberman and Real Time, their weapons were built into their helmets. Subsequent appearances have shown them armed almost exclusively with handheld cyberguns. The Cybermen have access to weapons of mass destruction known as cobalt bombs, also sometimes as cyber bombs, which were banned by the Galactic Armageddon Convention in Revenge of the Cybermen. A cyber Megatron bomb was mentioned in the Invasion, supposedly powerful enough to destroy all life on Earth, and in Earthshock the Cybermen also used android drones as part of their plans to invade the planet. The revived programmed Cybermen electrocute their victims by touching them, and at first carried no other weaponry. In Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, the Cybermen are equipped with retractable energy weapons housed within their forearms. These were actually first shown in the Age of Steel, but only very briefly, and weren't used during that episode. But also use advanced human weapons to battle the Daleks. In the Torchwood episode Cyberwoman, the partially converted Lisa Hallett used her electrical touch against the Torchwood team, as well as an energy beam fired from her arm, which could only stun the part of the body at which it was aimed. In the Pandorica Opens, the Cybermen again have the wrist blaster, but also regain the modified human weapons. In Nightmare in Silver, the Cybermen have the ability to move at supersonic speed.
You have declared war upon the Cybermen.
Of course, no look at the Cybermen would be complete without looking at the Cybermats. In their first appearance in the Tomb of the Cybermen, they resembled oversized metallic silverfish, and had segmented bodies with hair-like tactile sensor probes along the base of their heads, which were topped with crystalline eyes. The Second Doctor described them as a form of metallic life, implying that they may be semi-organic like the Cybermen, and that they too attack by feeding off brainwaves. The second model of Cybermat seen in the Wheel in Space was used for sabotage, and able to tune in on human brainwaves. They were carried to the Wheel in small but high-density sacks that sank through the hull of the space station, causing drops in air pressure. These Cybermats had solid photoreceptors for eyes instead of crystals. The Second Doctor used an audio frequency to jam them, causing them to spin, crash and disintegrate. The third model, seen in Revenge of the Cybermen, was a much larger snake-like Cybermat that could be remotely controlled and could inject poison into its victims. It had no visible eyes or other features, and was vulnerable to gold dust just as the Cybermen were. The fourth model of Cybermat appears for the first time in the 2011 episode Closing Time, where it's shown to have an organic mouth full of sharp teeth and transmits power to a crashed cybership. In the audio play Spare Parts, Mats, as they're referred to, are cybernetically augmented creatures sometimes kept as pets. Cybermats of a different design are used for surveillance by the Mondas Central Committee. The creatures occasionally go wild, chewing on power sources, and must be rounded up by a mat catcher. The Cybermats also appeared in the video game Blood of the Cybermen, where instead of killing they turned individuals into cyber slaves. The slaves have mostly human bodies, but have Cybermen heads and arms. The Cybermen see the cyber slaves as inferior and delete them once they've served their purpose. An upgraded form of Cybermats appeared in Nightmare in Silver. They were incredibly small mechanical insects that were more versatile and were able to partially convert other life forms into Cybermen. They were referred to as Cybermites.
The Doctor is as cautious as our records warned us.
The Cybermen first appear in the serial The 10th Planet, set in 1986, in which their origin story is told thus. Millennia ago, during prehistoric times, Earth had a twin planet known as Mondas. Mondas was knocked out of solar orbit and drifted into deep space. The Mondasians, already far in advance of Earth's technology and fearful for their race's survival, replaced most of their bodies with cybernetic parts. Having eventually removed all emotion from their brains to maintain their sanity, the natives installed a drive propulsion system so they could pilot the planet itself through space. As the original race was limited in numbers and were continually being depleted, the Mondasians, now Cybermen, became a race of conquerors who reproduced by taking other organic beings and forcibly changing them into Cybermen. These Cybermen fought against the First Doctor when they attempted to drain the Earth's energy to make way for Mondas' return to the solar system. However, Mondas absorbs too much energy from the Earth, destroying it and those Cybermen on Earth. Redesigned Cybermen next appear in the Moonbase in 1967. This story is set in 2070, opposite the Second Doctor, who discovers a crypt containing Cybermen during a visit to the Moon. They attempt to remotely destroy the Earth by affecting its weather patterns with a device called the graviton. However, the graviton is used against them, hurling them into space. The tomb of the Cybermen sees a human expedition discover sarcophagi containing hibernating Cybermen on the planet Telos, where the creatures arise and attack. In The Wheel in Space in 1968, the Doctor and his crew face off against the Cybermen on a marooned Earth space station. The Cybermen plan to take over the space station, after which their fleet will invade the Earth. The Doctor uses an X-ray laser to destroy them. In the invasion that same year, the Doctor and his companions visit late 20th century England, where he discovers an army of Cybermen hidden on Earth, working with business magnate Tobias Vaughan for their fleet to invade the planet. Their invasion is defeated by the Doctor and the military support of the newly formed United Nations Intelligence Task Force. The Cybermen didn't face the Third Doctor during his original television run, but one is shown as part of an exhibit in the Carnival of Monsters, and they do come up against him in the 20th anniversary special The Five Doctors. The Fourth Doctor encounters a small group of Cybermen in Revenge of the Cybermen. These Cybermen are depicted as the wandering remnants of a fallen empire, ravaged by the so-called cyber wars against victorious humanity, which had crucially exploited the Cybermen's weakness to gold. These Cybermen attempted to restore the glory of their race by destroying the humans' gold-rich asteroid Voga. In Earthshock in 1982, the Fifth Doctor encounters the Cybermen in the Earth year 2526, who seek to destroy the planet with a large bomb, while alien dignitaries visit the Earth to discuss the ongoing cyber wars. After the Doctor foils the plan, they decide to crash their freighter into the planet Earth with much the same effect. Adric, however, is trapped on board and attempts to escape the freighter, but inadvertently causes it to travel back in time. The freighter does indeed crash into prehistoric Earth, sadly killing Adric and triggering the extinction of the dinosaurs. Attack of the Cybermen in 1985 is set much earlier in the Cyber Wars than Revenge, during a time in which the Cybermen faced defeat following the human invention of the glitter gun and the discovery of Voga. The Cybermen attempt to use a time machine to avert the destruction of Mondas. Their plan fails, and they also lose their adopted homeworld of Telos to its original inhabitants, the Cryons, following the intervention of the Sixth Doctor. The Cybermen appeared for one final time in the classic series in Silver Nemesis, in which a fleet of cyber warships assemble to convert Earth into the new Mondas. A cyber scouting party is sent to Earth in search of the legendary Nemesis statue, a Time Lord artifact of immense power made of the living metal Validium. The intervention of the Seventh Doctor and Ace, however, ensured that the Nemesis destroyed the entire cyber fleet instead. Between the series' cancellation and its subsequent revival, they make another brief appearance in the 1993 Children in Need special, Dimensions in Time, as one of the enemies the Rani uses to hunt the Doctor.
So, we meet again, Doctor.
In the first series of the revived programme, the Cybermen don't appear except for the head of one, seen in a private museum of alien artefacts on Earth, in the 6th episode, Dalek. For Series 2 in 2006, the Cybermen were reintroduced with a new origin story set in a parallel universe. In the Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel two-part story, the Doctor, Rose Tyler and Mickey Smith crash down into a parallel London where the Cybermen are being created on modern-day Earth. The Cybermen are created by the owner of Cybus Industries, the dying transhumanist scientist John Lumick. Lumick's Cybermen successfully convert much of the world's population by placing their human brains into robotic shells. The Doctor and his friends free London from their control, and a human resistance group known as the Preachers then sets up cleaning the remainder of Lumick's factories around the world. The Cybermen then reappear in the 2006 finale Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, exploiting a breach between universes to invade the Earth. This breach is caused by a transport device belonging to the Daleks, who reveal themselves and trigger an all-out war between the two species. The Doctor ultimately reopens the breach, causing the Cybermen and all but a few Daleks to become trapped inside before it's resealed. The Cybermen next appear in the 2008 Doctor Who Christmas special, The Next Doctor, emerging in 1851 London after the Daleks damaged the walls of reality in the previous episode. They attempt to raise a new army on Earth using period technology, but are once again foiled by the Doctor. They next appear in the Pandorica Opens, alongside many of the Doctor's recurring enemies, as part of an alliance dedicated to stopping him. They arrive in cyberships to apprehend him in 102 AD. They then appear in A Good Man Goes to War. Beginning with this episode, the Cybermen do not possess a chest logo. Rory confronts them and demands the location of a secret asteroid base, but when they don't respond, the Doctor destroys a large fleet of their spaceships in a message to them to indicate his seriousness. In closing time, an old, long-since crashed cybership beneath Earth's surface is reawakened by electrical work in Colchester. The Cybermen attempt to cyber-convert the Doctor's friend Craig, but he resists conversion due to his love for his child, causing an emotional feedback loop that destroys the cyber ship. Subsequently, Stephen Moffat commissioned writer Neil Gaiman to radically overhaul the Cybermen, producing the episode Nightmare in Silver. In the distant future, the Cybermen re-emerge following what was believed to be their complete eradication by humankind. The Cybermen have now evolved to lose many of their limitations, and are super fast. They adapt to overcome assaults against them, and can cyber-convert any biological organism into their ranks. The Doctor is partially converted by the Cybermites, leading him to battle for control of his own mind against the Cyberplanner. They appear to be wiped out once more when the Emperor of the Galaxy orders the planet's destruction, though one Cybermite is seen floating through space. And that's it for this week. As always, thank you for listening, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Cybermen. So if you have any feedback on the show, you can email me at respectthething@outlook.com. That's respectthething@outlook.com. Or message me on Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast on Facebook. Next week, we take a look at what have long been considered the Doctor's deadliest enemies. Who are they?
Well, goodbye, my boy. You did quite well. Quite well. It's reassuring to know that my future is in safe hands.
Thank you for listening to Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all copyright and property of the BBC, and no infringement is intended.